It's the Wednesday edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You know the deal. You know what to do. Panther-Lair.com, website below, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news, football, basketball, recruiting. We cover it all. Panther-Lair.com, and of course, message boards where you can interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans all day, every day. And the Pitt fans are buzzing on the message boards this week. Lots to talk about there, and we talk about it all right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. The like button is over there. The subscribe button is down there. Click that thing, turn on your notifications. You get alerts sent to your phone so you never miss anything we do. You never miss any of these Morning Pitt videos that we release every day, Monday through Friday. You never miss the post-practice press conference videos like we put up yesterday of Pat Narduzzi after Tuesday's practice. You never miss practice highlights. We've got some good video of the defensive backs coming out today. And, of course, you never miss our live show. Like, we'll be live tonight at 8:30 p.m. for the Panther-Lair show right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You don't want to miss any of that. So subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on the notifications, and you will be locked in for everything that we do. And, of course, everything that's been going on right now, or at least the most recent news, the biggest news to discuss. No, it's not the change in the spring game format. We'll talk about that another time this week. It's Pitt basketball landing a transfer. You see I changed the slideshow? We got basketball photos right now. Trying to be topical. We got the story up at the top of the page there. You can see it. We got the basketball photos right next to us. It's Zack Austin, transfer wing from High Point, coming in after all-conference, I think, honorable mention year that he was this past season. He's a redshirt sophomore, coming off his redshirt sophomore year, I should say. So he's going to be a redshirt junior, and technically I think would have 3 years to play. He redshirted during the 2020-21 season, which was the COVID year. So, I guess basketball would be 1920. So I guess he just has the 2 years left to play. I'll clarify that just to be sure. But either way, he's coming into play this year. Jeff Capel's first land from the transfer portal this offseason. You know, they went into this postseason or offseason period with 4 open scholarship spots after Nate Santos and John Hughley decided to transfer. Plus all the other guys who ran out of eligibility, and then all the freshmen that they're bringing in. They end up with 4 spots to give, and they've given one out now, and it's Zack Austin. Like I say, he's a transfer wing from High Point, coming in after being one of the Panthers' best players. When I say the Panthers, I'm talking about High Point here. He averaged 14 points per game last season, 5 rebounds. His first year, his redshirt freshman year 2 years ago, he averaged 14.4 points per game and 8 rebounds per game. He was High Point's leading three-point shooter in makes. He had, 67 three-point shots that he made. He attempted over 200. Shot 32% from outside. But the thing about Zack Austin, he's a 6'7" wing. He's going to be listed on the roster at 6'7", so let's just stop talking about whether he's 6'5" or 6'3" or 6'6" or something like that. He might realistically be 6'6" when you watch video, and I think we've all been trying to cram as much as we can over the last couple of days. I mean, he looks really big. He looks like he could legitimately be a 6'7" guy. And I think there are a lot of intriguing things about Zack Austin, but I mean, I kind of feel like he's one of the more intriguing guys that we've looked at as a Pitt target in the transfer portal because of that size and the fact that he's 6'7", but he's not playing as a power forward. He might, depending on the certain kind of lineup, but he's going to be lining up as a wing. I mean, that's sort of his primary position the 3, if you want to call it that. 3 and 4 somewhat interchangeable. It's, Blake Hinson's on one side of the court. This guy, Zack Austin, will be on the other. But he's got such an interesting game because he can shoot threes, like we said. I mean, not a super high percentage, shooting 32%. But he's a willing shooter, and I think he's enough of a shooter that he's going to be a threat that other teams have to respect. He'll be on the scouting report as a possible shooter. You can watch those videos of Zack Austin making shots in transition, and guys are late to close out, and he's not hesitant to put up the shot. When he's got an opening, he will shoot. And if you can shoot above 30%, I think you're enough of a threat. If you shoot with the volume that he shot with, and I'm not sure if Pitt necessarily is going to want him shooting 200 threes this year, this coming season. But if you can shoot the volume that he shot with and have something of a quick-ish trigger and show little hesitation, I think, teams are going to have to respect that. And, we talked about this heading into last season. We talked about the need to, have shooters, have threats from outside to take some of the pressure off of John Hughley inside. I think you still apply that whether it's, Federico or Guillermo Diaz-Graham playing at the center position. You still want to draw that attention away from those guys and try and develop your interior scoring and your inside offense, your post offense, as much as you can. And the fewer opportunities you give teams to emphasize that area or focus their defense around the basket, the better I think it makes you overall. And so having Hinson on the outside, having Zack Austin on the outside, and having some more shooters, and we'll talk about that in a second, that's going to help that cause. But Zack Austin's not just an outside shooter. He's not just a three-point shooter. As our guy Steven Gertz pointed out, he's pretty good at converting around the basket. And it really seemed to develop a lot of that game from his redshirt freshman year to his redshirt sophomore year, and became something of an interior scorer, or at least an interior finisher. One of the highlight films that's on YouTube sort of lists his points per possession and conversion rates, and when he cuts to the basket, which doesn't happen on a ton of his possessions, but when he does it, he converts at a remarkably high percentage. If you could develop that part of his game and emphasize that part of his game, because the thing I've heard about Zack Austin is that he's a freak athlete, that he's going to bring a level of athleticism to this team. I'm not going to say he's going to be the most athletic guy on the team, but he's bringing some pretty high level athleticism for a guy his size who plays sort of his position. And I think he's going to be a real handful for other teams to defend. I think it's going to be a challenge to try and match his size, his length, his athleticism, and his explosiveness. Because you have a guy that has that mix of talents and that mix of skills, it's just a real matchup problem. You throw in the fact that he's an active and willing and effective rebounder, even though his rebounding numbers dropped from his redshirt freshman year to last year. He's still, 5 rebounds per game. I mean, you take that. Where would that rank on Pitt's roster? I had the stats opened up here. If you look at Pitt's rebounders last year, Blake Hinson was the leading rebounder. We know that. But 5.4 rebounds per game would be the second highest average on Pitt's team last year. Hinson averaged 6. Federico averaged 5.3. So if you bring Zack Austin in, averaging 5.4 rebounds per game, which is what he averaged a season ago, that's a huge boost for a team that needed rebounding help. And we talked about that endlessly last season, about how they weren't a great rebounding team, particularly on the offensive end, or particularly giving up offensive rebounds, I should say. Although I think every coach in the country would say their team needs to do better at offensive rebounding themselves. But if he can help in that area, in addition to being a threat to shoot from outside, in addition to being a threat to finish around the basket, cutting to the basket, he's the type of player that I don't really think they had on the roster last season. I mean, the closest thing was sort of the I almost kind of think he's sort of the idealized version, a little bit taller, of Nate Santos. If you think about what we wanted Nate Santos to be, or believed he could be, particularly with some of the things he showed last year, some of the toughness, some of the physicality, some of the rebounding, some of the ability to cut to the basket, and some of the defensive prowess that he showed. And I mean, I use prowess just to mean effectiveness. I don't know that Nate Santos necessarily showed much prowess in any one area. But I think when we talked about what his ceiling could be, or what he could potentially be, boy, if he could just put it all together, if he could shoot and keep up that physicality and that rebounding, I mean, take all of that idealized version of Nate Santos, and add an inch or two, and I think that's what you have in Zack Austin. I think that's what he could potentially be here at Pitt next season, which I think is pretty exciting, because, again, they didn't really have a player like him last year. And so I think, and we'll talk about this a little bit, it's something I was kind of thinking about. I think they'll want to mimic some of the success from a year ago. I think they want to try and build the team somewhat similar to how it was built a year ago. And some of that speaks to culture and chemistry. They want to build with the same kinds of guys, the right kind of guys. But at the same time, I think looking at a team that was able to attack offensively and be high scoring and be able to really shoot themselves sometimes out of, but a lot of times back into a game, pretty much in any game, was one of the dominant traits of this team. Jamarius Burton was willing that team to wins in a lot of occasions, but when you had Greg Elliott and you had Nike Sabandi and you had Blake Hinson and you had Nelly Cummings, you had a lot of guys who could knock down shots from outside. And when you can knock down shots from outside, you're never really out of a game. You can get back into it pretty quick. And so I could see the coaches wanting to try to follow that blueprint again. But I think when you take a guy like Zack Austin, you are altering a little bit. Because this is a different kind of guy than they had. Nate Santos pops up on the screen. It's kind of perfect. This is a different kind of guy than they had last year. And how they build around him. I mean, I don't think he's going to be the centerpiece or the focal point. But I think as such a unique kind of player, I think it's, it looks like a great piece to add. And really kind of gives this roster and the lineup a different dimension and a different dynamic on the court this season. So that's the first piece they've added. 1 down, 3 to go. The next target, of course, we're keeping an eye on is Ishmael Leggett, the guard from Rhode Island. He's coming in on an official visit this weekend, actually. Leggett was, just want to bring up the Rhode Island stats here. Leggett was Rhode Island's leading scorer this past season. He averaged 16 points per game. He averaged 5.8 rebounds per game, which, as a guard, I mean, that's it's funny because he also would have been the second leading rebounder on Pitt's roster last year. He shot 32% from three, was easily their most prolific three-point shooter, attempting 150 points from outside, or 150 shots, from outside the arc. Shot about 39% overall, but that's going to be affected by the fact that he was 32% from three. 84.5% free throw shooter. It hit a 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, 73-72. But I think with the thing with Leggett that I would say is he was Rhode Island's offense. I mean, he was the guy who had to make it happen. If they were going to have a chance to win, he needed to score a lot. And to score a lot, he needed to shoot a lot. You look at his numbers, he shot like over 40% from three as a freshman. He only attempted like 38 shots or something like that. And then as he sort of doubled his volume, the percentage dropped to, close to 10 percentage points. It leveled out, from 2 years ago to last year, around 31.8, 31.6%. Even though he increased the volume again from 2 years ago to last year, his three-point shooting percentage sort of leveled out. He ended up making 49 threes last year, so less than Zack Austin did. But again, Leggett, I think, was probably forcing shots more at Rhode Island than he'll need to do this year. You know what I mean? This year, he'll have other players around him who will score, and he won't need to be the guy. And I think sometimes, I don't want to say taking that pressure off, but, because I don't want to say that it's how a guy reacts to pressure, but I think he was doing what he felt and what probably the Rhode Island coaches felt he needed to do to help them win. He comes to Pitt, it's going to be a different setup, and maybe they can, potentially decrease the volume, but possibly, and I think this is probably what the Pitt coaches are looking for, but what they're thinking is that they can increase the efficiency on the shooting. You're going to have to get more three-point shooting from somewhere. I was looking at some numbers here with Nike Sabandi, Nelly Cummings, Greg Elliott, and Jamarius Burton. Those guys made 199 three-point shots last year. I mean, you lost close to 200 made three-pointers. I mean, we can even take Jamarius Burton out of there. He only made 18. That's 181 made three-pointers that you've lost from the roster. You bring in, Zack Austin, who made 62 last year. If you can get Ishmael Leggett, that's another 49. That's, 111. You still need to find another 70 or so three-pointers. I think you probably need Leggett to make more. I think you need Austin, if you can get more than 62 out of him, that would be good. But that's going to be tough because he's not going to shoot at the percentage that, Nike Sabandi or Nelly Cummings were in the 35-36% range. He's going to shoot in the 32% range. You don't necessarily want to throw as many shots up if you're not going to make as many. I think the Pitt coaches are hoping, and if they can land Leggett, they probably are hoping they can get him into that 35% range, 36% range, which is right around where Sabandi and Cummings were, and get the volume up, again, more efficiently, not forcing the shots, but through the course of the offense, running the offense, and in transition and all of that, and try and make up some ground on that extra 70 or so threes that they haven't really accounted for, of guys they lost versus the guys they're bringing in. I do want to go down that path of talking about making up all those lost three-pointers, if you do need to make up all those lost three-pointers. But when it comes to Leggett, I think he's a guy who could probably play the two. I don't think he's a point guard. He's more of an off-ball guard, but I think he's a playmaker who will probably, if he ends up coming to Pitt, will probably benefit from not being the man, and potentially even play at a higher level when he's not trying to do it all himself, which seems to be the case for him at Rhode Island. If they could get him, you've now got an off guard. You've got a wing, wing in Austin, an off-ball guard in Leggett, and you have two more spots to work with. And I still think finding like a Greg Elliott type of shooter would be great. Austin and Leggett can make threes. I think they'll be a threat from outside. Again, if Pitt gets Leggett, but neither one of them is really on the level of like a Greg Elliott. Even if those two guys improve their efficiency by 2 or 3 percentage points, or improve their shooting by 2 or 3 percentage points, they're still only kind of replacing Nelly Cummings and Nike Sabandi. You still haven't replaced that knockdown sniper, which is what Greg Elliott was, and we haven't really seen them get on just quite yet from the transfer portal. If you could get a guy who's a point guard and can shoot really well, I mean, that would be the ultimate. I think they either like to find a sniper or find a veteran guard who can kind of run the show and sort of create for himself, but maybe isn't that knockdown shooter that you're looking for. If you can find a guy who's good at setting up somebody like Austin or Hinson or Leggett, if they get him, or one of the other guards or the young players coming in, that would probably work pretty well. I do wonder if you feel like it'll be interesting to see if the coaches really attempt to replace all 200 of those lost three-pointers, with those 4 seniors leaving. Like I say, Austin and Leggett would potentially bring about 110, 111. You still need another 70. Guillermo Diaz-Graham and Jorge Diaz-Graham combined to make 19 last year. I think those numbers can come up. I actually think you can probably count on getting more than 19 three-pointers out of those two guys combined. I don't know what the ceiling is. 50 between the two of them? Is that shooting too high? 35 between the two of them if they're playing a full season, playing regular minutes a full season? And Will Jeffers made 11 threes 2 years ago. Jeff Capel said his ideal role would be as a 3-and-D guy, so maybe he can bring a little bit of extra boost. It might look different this year where you had Hinson and Elliott were the obvious big-time shooters, and then Sabandi and Cummings were that next wave. You might have Hinson and then a bunch of next wave guys, and any of them could knock down a three at any time, but you might not have anybody who makes all the threes the way like Greg Elliott did, you know what I mean? Or even, and certainly not like Hinson did. So that's going to be an ongoing thing to monitor. I've talked all offseason they need to get a shooter. Shooting's the most important priority, but maybe spreading it around a little bit more, with a guy like Zack Austin, maybe that's a different kind of approach. A lot of it might depend on who the other guard is that they bring in. I think they'll try and bring in, I think they'll try and get Leggett this weekend, and then I think they'll try and get another guard on top of that, and it'll probably depend on who that other guard is and what they do well and how they fit in with Pitt's offense and Pitt's system. So Austin on board. They now have how many would that be? 10 scholarship players. I drew a complete blank there. You've got guards in Dior Johnson, Jalen Lowe, and Carlton Carrington. You have wings in Marlon Barnes, and I think Will Jeffers, you would probably count him as a 3/4, a wing. And Zack Austin. You have your fours. your power forwards are Blake Hinson and Jorge Diaz-Graham, although I genuinely think Pitt still believes they can play Jorge Diaz-Graham at the 3, or whatever passes as a 3. I guess I think they still believe they could play Blake Hinson and Jorge Diaz-Graham on the court at the same time. Whatever position you see Zack Austin playing, which I think is probably more of a 3, I think they believe they could use Jorge at that spot as well. And then your 5s right now, Federico, and Guillermo Diaz-Graham. Like I've said for a while, I think getting if you could find a transfer center who's willing to be in a rotation with those two guys, with Federico and Guillermo, okay. I think that's going to be a tough sell, but that might be something to try to find. And I think that guy might be out there. You just got to find the right guy with the right temperament, who's got the right, whose ambitions line up with what you're looking for. And that can take some digging. But 3 more spots, like I say, I think an off-ball guard like Ishmael Leggett, who's visiting this weekend, a point guard or a veteran guard, ideally one who could shoot, is a priority. And then I would think a big of some kind for that other spot. You're just going to have to find a way to convince them to come in and play when Pitt has Federico, Guillermo Diaz-Graham, Blake Hinson, Jorge Diaz-Graham, Will Jeff. They have a lot of bodies kind of hovering around those 4 and 5 spots. You got to find a big that you can convince to come in and play in there. But the first domino fell, and it was Zack Austin, high point wing, transferring in to join Pitt for this coming season. So we'll see where they go from here. We'll see if they add any other visitors for this weekend. We'll be keeping an eye on that. And of course, we'll have a lot of coverage right here at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, and on these videos, Morning Pitt every day, Monday through Friday on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Make sure you tune in tonight at 8:30 p.m. for the live Panther-Lair show. We'll be talking about Zack Austin, any other transfer news that comes up. We'll be talking about spring football, what to watch for in the spring game, and lots of other Pitt topics. Whatever you want to talk about, we will talk about it right here on the Panther-Lair show on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So thanks for watching this video. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We appreciate that. I hope you've had a great week so far. We've made it to the middle of the week. It's hump day. So enjoy your hump day. And we will talk to you again tonight for the live show, and then tomorrow morning for the tonight for the live Panther-Lair show, tomorrow morning for the Morning Pitt, right here on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com.